to Conveyancing Matters with Lorraine and Stu. Join us for a chat about all things property.
So, welcome to another episode of Conveyancing Matters. Today we've got a very special guest, Charlie Lamdin.
Hello, Charlie. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Lorraine. How are you guys? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good. It's lovely of you to join us.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. As you probably already know, I can talk until I'm switched off about this entire topic of the
Sounds
house.
like somebody else I know, Charlie, that does.
Cheers, mate. Cheers, mate. Well, Charlie, as we said off air, the bulk of our audience is lovely conveyancing lawyers and conveyancing support staff and paralegals. So maybe there's the odd one of them who doesn't know much about you and your background, because I think it's fair to say you sort of sit in the sort of client-facing and estate agency space. So would you just like to tell our audience a little bit about yourself first?
Certainly. So my relevant background is after a few years in the city, which was fascinating back in the 90s, in the early 90s, when I was a qualified derivatives broker, which was really complicated but brilliant and taught me everything about global macroeconomics and money markets and the whole thing. I did that. Well, all my friends went to university. I did that, and I think I came out with a lot more than some of those guys did. But at the same time, I also started off as an amateur landlord investor type person, and I did, sheer dumb luck in the 90s. It was right place, right time. I got some cheap stuff, rented it out, and then sold it to the tenants each time. And I thought, this is like falling off a log. It was just right place, right time. But I learned, I'm massively condensing what was a lot of experience actually as a young guy in his 20s, dealing with tenants and dealing with agents and dealing with conveyancers. So I had a really early start on that side of it, never expecting to actually end up working in this industry. And then long before I got into the industry, but while I was doing that, I had several of my best mates were at Foxtons in the early days in the 90s, what they call them the glory days. And I know why. It was wild. I spent a lot of time hanging out with those guys. And in fact, one of them became my business partner in the first company I did set up. So I had a lot of ex-Foxtons guys join me in my first company. And I had a girlfriend who, through my friends at Foxtons, I got her a job at Foxtons. So she broke the record for the most exchanges in 1 month. She did 21 exchanges in a month in their South Kensington office. And I broke the record. To my knowledge, it's never been beaten. And that happened because she came home after about 3 months of doing the job, which I'd helped introduce her to the guys, and she got the job. She came home complaining about how it was mean and all anybody wanted to do was make money. And she wasn't enjoying it. And I said, well, you got a choice to make, right? Either decide to make some money yourself and just accept the way it is and embrace it, or leave. Either one. Like, don't carry on doing it half baked. That's not good for you. And so she decided, I'll give it a crack. And she's come home every night and talk to me about the day. And I found myself giving her advice. I was basically a sales guy right from the get-go. And so I was advising the Foxtons negotiator who broke the record for deals back in the 90s. So I was already giving agents advice before I even knew about it. And my mates who were there, one went on to Countrywide. He became the highest paid, all of which is to say that before I even got into the industry, I had this extraordinary level of exposure to people on the front line of agency and property. Never thought it would be relevant to me. And then I ended up thinking, when the internet came along, don't need agents anymore. Don't need agents anymore. I was completely wrong. But I got investment very quickly. I was 26 years old. I got investment from some really big guys to start this thing that was going to be called Property to Go. I was going to cut out estate agents, and buyers and sellers could happily transact without agents. And that led me to realizing that was wrong. And as everyone else who doesn't understand the process, I just thought, there's no, what do agents do? There's no need for them. Now I understand what agents do, which is that it is an incredibly complicated and delicate process of expectation management with emotional people. That is what estate agency is, right? Very, very complicated expectation management with a lot of emotional people with conflicting interests. Sometimes two people on the same side of a transaction have conflicting interests, for example, in a divorce scenario, right? That is actually, and I'm back on the front lines with agents that I'm working with now on the no valuations process. helping them. And I'm now back at the front line experiencing how the public behaves when they're moving house. And it's reminded me why.
Can I cut in and ask you something there? I'm sorry to cut in across, but I think that the key line for me there is expectation management with emotional people. Because Stu and I say time and time again, of course, that as well as all of the legal due diligence and good and marketable title and all the rest of it, that is what much of the role of the conveyancer is about.
And the hardest part as well. It's the hardest thing, I think, almost that we do sometimes. Telling somebody it's going to take X amount of time when they don't want it to, that kind of thing.
But Charlie, my question is, do you think that, particularly I would suggest in more recent years, post stamp duty, land tax, no holiday, it certainly wasn't a holiday for property lawyers. Do you think actually there's an increasing mismatch between the expectation management as presented by the estate agents, who of course buyers and sellers come across first, and the conveyancer? Are the estate agents doing the conveyancers a disservice?
The bad ones are definitely. And this is the point. You cannot generalize that all agents or all conveyancers are the same. We all know there's a spectrum of quality in any industry. And again, as the guy with the sort of bird's eye view of this industry, and I remember the very first time I realized that's what I was doing. I was sitting in what was then a Serta home, but became Zoopla's offices in Union Street in Southwark. And I was sitting in a meeting of all their agent-facing account managers on one side of the table and all their product techie guys on the other side of the table. And I witnessed this. I mean, they may as well have been talking different languages. They did not understand each other at all. And as an observer of all of the parties in this marketplace, by the way, there are, depending on how you look at it, there are 9 or 10 distinctly separate stakeholders in housing transactions.
Yeah, that's the point you've made on numerous occasions, Stu, isn't it? I think, did you count? How many did you count once, Stu?
Well, you can actually get up to 19 if it's a leasehold where you might have, for example, a residents association, landlord, management company. Yes, you can, with conveyancing, you can get up to 19 third parties that have input into the transaction.
I'm going to ask you a question, Lorraine, but let me just give you the 9, let me find it. The 9 parties that are involved in some way or another in almost all transactions: sellers, buyers, agents, housing developers. Now, my point is they're not involved in all transactions, but they're a massive influence on the entire market. Portals, prop tech, all the suppliers behind the scenes of agents that the public never comes into contact with, lenders, conveyancers, and my favorite, government.
Well, there'd be mortgage brokers, of course.
Yeah, mortgage brokers.
Yeah. I mean, the brokers. I said lenders, but yeah, you add brokers into that as well.
Yeah.
And this is what, and the thing that I've never heard anyone say is that the problem with this industry is because of the sheer number of people involved, and everyone's perspective is different. Everyone's perspective is different. Now, I don't put myself in, and I have been a prop tech provider to agents, right? But I am actually someone who's generally anti most of the prop tech out there, right? Most of it makes things more complicated, worse, more expensive, and slows things down. Most of it, the concept when it's proposed, oh, it sounds great. You use our tech and it saves you time. In the real world, that almost never happens.
Totally, 100% agree, Charlie.
Yeah.
Anybody, if we had £1 for every time a prop tech provider said, hey, we've got a game changer, it's utter nonsense, because I've been in the game a really long time, longer than Stu, because I'm that much older than him. But the issue is that it's so fragmented. You've got 10 or 15 bits of prop tech that do the same thing in relation to one bit of the transaction. So if you multiply that across all the parts of the transaction or the conveyancing journey, and then the number of firms, it's just ridiculous. It's fragmentation.
I always say it often solves problems that actually don't exist.
100%.
Correct.
Yeah.
But so to get to your question is, you're asking about conveyancers, are agents doing managing expectations properly as far as conveyancing is concerned? So I look at all these stakeholders in this industry, and I see that each one of them has a different perspective and a different angle, and therefore a different solution to the problem. And to my knowledge, I am actually the only person who is not a committed member of any of those groups, right? Yes, I'm involved in many ways, but I'm not one or the other. And for 25 years, my vision that I've been working towards has been, there's going to be a faster way for everyone to do this. And one of the problems, and one of the reasons that there's no progress has been made in 25 years, right? Transaction times are slower now than they were then. Fees are lower now than they were then. I mean, on any metric, it's worse now than it was 20 years ago.
100%.
Yeah.
Is simply because, and this is just like it's a sort of an innocent observation, unless you zoom out and look at this situation from everyone's perspective, you cannot come up with a solution. Because I remember about 20 years ago, there was a huge legal platform. They got about 10 million quid behind building it. I remember it was yellow. And loads of lawyers are signed up to it, and it just died. It just flopped.
Right? Lorraine knows who that is, don't you, Lorraine?
Go on.
You know who the yellow, was it a rabbit or was it a hare or begin with V or something like that?
Don't remember.
Don't remember, I'll tell you after.
So yeah, but there've been lots and lots of attempts at this, right? And they all fall at the first hurdle, which is that none of them are built with the entire ecosystem in mind, right? So 25 years is what I've spent building what I'm hoping is going to become the entire transaction ecosystem. From the point at which a buyer goes online and goes, oh, I'm looking for a home, and they currently end up on Rightmove or Zoopla, right? Best Agent already has a portal to do that, right the way through to completion and issuing the paperwork and that kind of stuff, which means that all parties involved can have access to it. You can't mandate it. That doesn't work either. Mandating never works in what should be free markets. It always backfires. But if you create the right incentives for all the right parties, everybody does it. And so I don't know if you're aware of the project I've been working with Carrington's on. Carrington's in Southwest London, right? Are you aware of this?
No,
no valuations.
No.
So I basically proved that I'm right. Okay?
No.
And in 9 months of work, I started working with them in February this year, right? And back then, their average time on market was over 100 days because they could only win stuff by overvaluing it, and it had already come from Foxtons or Dexter's and was already overvalued. And their deal time was 115 to 120 days after sale agreed to exchange. So 9 months later, everything they list, with one or two exceptions, has gone under offer in 28 days. Everything. They have 0 fall throughs, and their time to exchange is now 7 weeks. Everything. Okay. I went in there. They basically came to me and said, we're good agents, but we're having a nightmare in the face of the overvaluing by Dexter's and Foxtons. Can you help us? And on my condition, this is condensing weeks of conversations. I said, I can help you, but you'll have to do exactly what I tell you, and you won't like a lot of it. But if you're willing to do that, I can help you, and I promise you we'll smash it. Now, these results are even better than I'd imagined, right? And step number one is you do not give the seller a valuation. This golden rule, right? That is the start of where all expectations are thrown out the window and gone wrong. And then it's just a shit fight after that forever, right? If you give the seller even a ballpark figure, and I said to them, when the seller asks you for the 3rd time in the pitch, come on, look, just give us a ballpark figure, you have to say no. The process that we follow, which results in much shorter deal times, more competing buyers for your property, so a better price and a shorter deal time, requires that you accept the fact that the market determines the price of your house, and we will deliver the market, and the market will tell you the price. We're not going to give you a price. And then they of course say, well, what do we launch it at? That's part of the process that I teach them, and it's a much slower process of coming to the market, right? 2 to 3 to 4 weeks from instruction to actual launch, because of how critical the launch price is and the process they go through to establish it. But that's what results in, it's actually 19, 20, 21 days. Usually within 3 weeks it's under offer.
But Charlie, where does, within that sort of ecosystem that you describe, where does the where and how
that's critical.
Does the regulated conveyancer fit in? Because of course, one of the issues that Stu and I mention all the time is just in a very general sense in terms of the portals, but of course, and sort of visibility in terms of transactions and the who and the what and what's happening and documents, is the very basic simple one, client confidentiality. And that, Stu, is something you come back to all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, so let me, because the conveyancing is almost as critical as the rest of it right at the outset, right? The sellers must agree to instruct conveyancers immediately. And in that 2 to 4 week period before launch, in most cases, the paperwork's ready by the time they launch. So it comes to market contract ready or close to it. They get a pre-sale survey done. They get conveyancers instructed at the point that the seller instructs the agent, so that they don't bring a property to market. And then, this is the condition to the seller. Like when they say to the seller, we sell everything for absolute top market price that you're going to get in a very short space of time, because we follow these rules. If you don't like the rules, we won't act for you. They all look at the results and go, well, okay, we can't argue with those results. We'll accept your terms, including the fee.
Is the conveyancer, can the conveyancer be anyone of the seller's choice, Charlie, or is there any sort of referral arrangement in there?
No, in fact, they've expressly removed referral, because I've got their fees up. So this agent's average fee when I began working with them was 1.1%. Right? They're now instructing everything at 2%. So do they need referral fees anymore? No, they don't.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Right? Because referral fees are a major part at the corporate level. The excessive referral fees are one of the biggest causes of this market's dysfunction of all.
Agree, completely agree.
Okay, so and until that is stopped, and there's no word from the government on that ever being stopped, the market will continue to suffer the stasis that it's suffering now. So I've proved, and it's, we're 9 months in, they know that there's going to be a fall through at some point, but so far, 0 fall throughs.
Is there a reservation agreement in there, Charlie? A tie-in? No,
nothing like that. They are. I mean, it's not just. The process is quite involved, and the way they register their buyers is now different. The way they set expectations before the viewings is now different. What they say at the viewings is now different. They basically don't say anything, right? Because the rule is it's total transparency, 0 manipulation. Let the market do its thing. The moment you start to try and manipulate anyone, you are tainting, you're contaminating the opportunity for the market to just do itself, to do what it does, right? People want to buy and sell. People want to move. And actually what agents mostly do is get in the way and stuff it up. And so I'm saying you make sure the sellers and the buyers are properly qualified, then you get out of the way. And when people ask you about price, you're not allowed to talk about price. You're not allowed to discuss price ever with anybody. How much should I offer? You should offer the maximum price you're comfortable paying for that property. Well, how much is that? We can't advise you. We're the agent for the seller. Only you can determine what your maximum.
So how does that work then, Charlie? So how does the market determine the value?
The psychology. I mean, I'm smiling because it's so beautiful the way it works, and the way that buyers start off kicking and screaming and squealing, like, you got to and the agent's just being purely professional, purely transparent, absolutely 0 manipulation. So there's nothing the buyer can do to say to the agent, "Oh, you're tricking me, you're lying to me." Like, no. It's like, so when they bring the property to the market, contract ready, at a price which is very, very carefully determined. It's not just a low price that can backfire, right? It's a very precise launch price for every property. They get, except for when they get it wrong, which has happened once or twice, but they get between, I think the average is 19 viewings per property. So they get between 15 and 25 viewings on every property. And their average instruction value is now about £1 million. Okay, so it's a lot of buyers registering. And they first of all check that they're proceedable, make sure that they are actually in a position to proceed if their offer is accepted. And they explain the process, and they say, right, the first open day, and it's not a big crowd walking around the house at the same time, it's 20-minute slots, right? And they typically have 8 to 10 viewings, and it's usually on a Saturday, because that's the process logistically. And the buyers go, well, Saturday is not great for me. That's fine, don't come. If you want the house, you will come.
Is that model, though, Charlie, would you say, and I guess I know the answer that you're going to give me already, but is that model something that would, work as well for a 2-bed semi in an area where the average property price is 100,000?
Arguably, it works even better for the volume end of the market. I'll explain why. But let me just answer the first question, because the beauty of how the market works, which is your question, Stuart, how does the market determine the price, is that when you've got 15 to 20 buyers coming through the door. And all the buyers know that that's true, right? There's no question about that. You know, they can look, these are all the viewing slots we've got. They see each other coming and going. They see the next people waiting. They realize, hang on, this agent's not making this up, right? And they say to them, so we've got 19 people booked, so there are 11 today, and there are another 8 next Saturday. We'll be doing second viewings next Saturday as well, and then going to offers after that. Now, the buyers hate this because the agent's doing the job so well. Remember, the agent works for the seller, right?
Yeah.
That the buyer can't argue. And we've experienced buyers ringing up and saying, look, I'm a much more serious buyer. I want to view it before the open day. I want to get this process stopped. I'm cash, I'm everything, blah, blah. And so we've had to formulate a response to that, because that's starting to happen on almost every property. And we're saying only money stops the process. You must have your conveyancer's got to send confirmation of approved source of funds and that they're in funds and you can exchange in 7 days. Other than that, the process continues. Right? Because it's amazing. So the buyers are fighting.
Sounds a bit like a repossession process, Charlie. Nothing stops the process until it's exchanged.
The beauty of this process is that it works like clockwork on almost every one. So the timing is right. It's the pre-launch, right? And what happens pre-launch, I haven't talked about, but that's really important. Then they have the launch, then they have round 1 of viewings, round 2 of viewings, and then they have offers. And the offer process is amazing because the agent never, I know we have had endless conversations discussing this. You never influence what they're offering. Now, we all know that agents do that. Right? Oh, well, so-and-so's offer this, you're going to have to offer this much, right?
Yeah.
And of course, buyers don't know if that's true or not, and often it isn't true. And so when they've got an agent saying it's entirely up to you what you offer, and they say, what other people offered? We can't divulge that. All we can say is that all of the offers we've had are above the launch price. That's all we can say, and provided it's true, of course. And so the buyers kick and scream and squeal, and they make their offers. And then the agent says, "I'm sorry to tell you, your offer's been unsuccessful. If it wasn't enough, well, how much more do I need to offer? We can't tell you. You must just offer what you're comfortable offering." And the point is, the conclusion is the same every time, which is you end up. I mean, on one of the best ones they did was a probate sale. They had 11 offering parties, right? They got down to 3 offering parties, all of them begging for a number. And the agent going, we can't do that. That's not our process. You must arrive at your number yourself. Reaching the number, and then the seller going, oh, but I was hoping for more. And the agent's able to say, well, if you think you can create a better market than we just did, where you've got 11 competing buyers, you know how to do that, tell us.
You go and find it.
Right. And then the seller kind of has to go, yeah, you've pretty much proved that's the market for this property. So now I'm just going to accept it or not. As a probate sale, they accepted it. But one of the final buyer on that one actually has gone on video. He's on their social media. You can go and watch it. They just posted it yesterday, I think. The buyer saying, I've never seen a more effective sales process in my life. And I'm on the wrong side of this. I'm the buyer, right? I'm the one that had to get, and he says about how frustrated he was. But he said, looking back at it now, he couldn't fault the transparency or the efficiency of the process. And he said, I'm now recommending all of my mates in this area that need to sell, got to come through you because that's just outstanding. So this is the point, right? The agent doesn't influence the price with the valuation. The agent doesn't influence any buyers. You stand back, let the market do it, and the market works very quickly. So provided you've got the buyers properly prepared and the sellers properly prepared, and people change their minds and people back out of offers. But when you've got a market that's strong, we had a beautiful scenario the other day where the winning bidder, waited until the week before exchange and then tried to renegotiate.
Yeah.
And they did so aggressively. Like there were thinly veiled legal threats in the initial renegotiation email. It was one of the most aggressive things I've ever seen. And the agent rang me up and said, how do we handle this one? And I said, you simply acknowledge their right to renegotiate. And you explain to them that the process will be, before you call the seller, you will call the other buyers who missed out because you know they haven't bought anywhere, and just ask to reaffirm what their prices are. And then when you know what those are, we'll then come back to this renegotiating buyer and say, what is your new price? And we'll present the new prices to the seller. And the buyer went nuts. You can't do that. This is just, we're being transparent. That's our process. That's what we will do. Step 1, check with the other buyers whether they're still interested. Step 2, communicate to the seller. And it was the guy they spent hours on the phone with him. He was on the phone trying to blackmail. I want a face-to-face with the seller. Blah, blah, blah. And I said, just stand your ground. Don't rise. Sit back, right? And And in the end, the buyer went, okay, I'm not renegotiating, and it worked. And this is my point. The process, when you don't influence and manipulate it works. So all of which is to say that my 30 years, including my start in the industry, of all of this, I know that faster transactions benefits everyone, including the whole of society. Social mobility, economic activity, GDP, employment, you name it, right? And not enough people focus on transactions. None of you focus on transactions in any part of the entire industry. Not even the government is focusing on transactions. Not even lenders are focusing on transactions. And if
but it's not in that. I mean, yeah, but it's kind of, I think the problem is the fragmentation, though, isn't it, Charlie? And everybody, the problem is that, and Stu and I talk about this quite a lot too, everyone's got their finger in the pie. They can all see how big that pie is. The lawyers, I think, over the last 30 years have done absolutely nothing to support themselves and fight their own corner, I might add. But I mean, Stu, this is something you and I talk about quite a lot, isn't it, in terms of just the number of people that now want a slice of that pie?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think people just see the amount of transactions that there are, and if you take a pound out of every transaction, look at the volume of money that you could make. It's a simple analogy like that. It's interesting what you say there, Charlie. It's a bit like sort of the old days of sealed bids. Do you remember those, Lorraine?
Yeah.
A sealed bid scenario, but I think even then you had a base price of some sort that was expected.
But guys, so on the transactions point, even you guys are missing it, right? There could and should be double the number of transactions that there are now. The demand for transactions is there, right? If you extrapolate 2006 transaction levels for our population growth, we'd be at 2 million transactions now, just almost double what we're at now, right? Richard Donald from Zoopla has shared with me his data, the surveys they've done with buyers, right? Renters, owners who want to move, all the rest of it. He said there is so much demand to move. And the thing that's holding it back, first and foremost, is everyone it's too toppy. Everything's too expensive, number one. And number two, the process is an absolute shit fight. It's a gauntlet of uncertainty that can go on for 9 months. And people just go, I don't want to move that much. But if it was easier, if it was quicker, if I could move, in 3 months, yeah, we'd move tomorrow. So this is what the people with the fingers in the pies are all missing, right? And I say this with affection and respect to all of the parties here, portals, lenders, conveyancers, agents, government, the whole lot, right? Everyone is inward looking on this industry, and no one's looking or listening to the consumer. Nobody, except me. Right.
Well, that's it. You've mentioned government a couple of times, Charlie. I mean, obviously we've had in the last couple of weeks, the government would say, yes, but Charlie, we've issued our consultation on the home buying and selling and moving process. We are starting to listen. Really? I mean, in a nutshell, what's your view on that?
Has mandatory qualifications made a difference in the quality of the conveyancing industry?
No, but then,
and it's not going to do an agency either. So, what are the 3 biggest problems in an agency are? Number one, overvaluing. Is it going to affect that? No. Number two, excessive commission structures between big conveyancers and agents. Is it going to change that? No. Number three, long sole agency contracts that clog the market up. Is it going to? No. So the 3 biggest problems are completely untouched. And the thing about qualification is it's a point of difference for agents. Right, I recommend that they get qualifications. They should go voluntarily to property market and get their qualifications. They should do that. Why wouldn't you do that? I think anyone's crazy not to do that. There are very good agents that haven't done it, but I still think it's you can only learn stuff from it, and it's nice to have the qualification after your name. If you make it mandatory, well, then the value goes away, and it doesn't improve standards. But there's this ridiculous blinkered attitude among the industry that the public will suddenly respect us if we all have qualifications.
No, they won't.
No, exactly. They won't. It's a waste of time.
Well, I think also the thing is, and one of my big beefs, just sort of generally, and I don't care what element of sort of regulation, what area you're in, regulation and enforcement have to be paid for. And we've already got, the agency world is already pretty heavily regulated in different ways. And for example, trading standards who are at the front line there, let's look at, for example, the material information fiasco that Stu and I've been talking about for the last 2 years. And as you say, what a complete shit show, quite frankly. But if there isn't the resource for effective regulation and enforcement of what we've already got, then further, the government's saying all further qualifications, it's all jolly marvellous. If nobody's there to enforce the transgressors, it's a waste of time.
Correct.
Absolute waste of time.
And if they just enforce existing regulations, things will be better anyway, but nobody does.
Yeah, but nobody's got the money to do it. And of course, what people often forget is that, for example, my regulator, the SRA, Stu's regulator, the CLC, any fines that they sort of squeeze out of organisations for transgressions, that goes to the Treasury anyway. That's just a little cash flow for the Treasury. It's not going into the process. It's not going to improve the process at all. But Stu, what's your view on the fact that, you know, Charlie's process seems to be pretty, you know, unarguable.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
the fact that the market is so fragmented, we're always going to have people that do different whatever.
Yeah, I think you know, from what you're saying, Charlie, it sounds absolutely brilliant, and the facts don't lie. It's whether you could convince the estate agent industry to roll that out, you know, as a way of doing things. That might be a big challenge. I know from sort of our side of the fence, rolling out change is extremely difficult. Estate agency in general spoke about the need for quicker transactions for a long time, upfront information, etc. But when it actually came in, I would have said there was virtually zero appetite to actually do that. We at this practice a while back, we would go out and see estate agents, and way before upfront information was a thing, and more of a hangover from hips. We actually tried to get our agents to, or even when we were courting new agents, we would try and ask them to get us instructed at the start, get our forms completed, etc., etc. We'd walk away with the new work, no problem, and the estate agents were enthusiastic to implement that change. But when it actually came down to it, they wouldn't. And I sometimes think that, you know, be it lawyers or estate agents, actually creating a big change is the difficult thing, especially if it isn't mandatory.
Quite right. And that's why I always say that the answer is always, without exception, incentives. Sorry, I got an eyelash in mine. And so it's funny that you say, how can you persuade other agents? Well, I've been sharing on the Best Agent social media channels the progress with Carrington's and the results, and they've been coming on camera and confirming it. And I've got, in 2 weeks' time, I've got 23 agents in Manchester coming to an event to learn about this process. A handful in Bristol and nearly 50 agents in London.
Wow.
I've got three events in 3 days where I'm presenting the results of this process. You know, which part of no fall throughs, higher fees, shorter transaction times, which part of that's not compelling enough for them? So where you're 100% right is, because I've experienced this myself as a CRM provider and seller of the last 25 years, there are agents who seem to be more, they care more about convincing themselves that they're right about everything than they do about making money. Right? I've witnessed it firsthand repeatedly. And to those agents, they can't be helped. Right? It's just very sad. Like, you know, you show someone and go, look. And by the way, one of the things about Carrington's is I said, stop all your prop tech. It was one of the rules. You got to stop all this time wasting faff. Oh, well, sometimes some of it works. Does it deliver the results we're talking about? No, just stop everything. We're going to have a clean slate and go back to old estate agency. This is the most amazing thing, right? This process with Carrington's involves zero technology. Telephone, email. That's it. And well-trained agents following
Charlie,
the process.
is that because what the conveyancers are facing, apart from, as I say, 30 years of not standing up for themselves when they should? I mean, our job is to get a good and marketable title and to effect registration for our buyers and lenders. That's our core task. You know, faffing around with fencer certificates and electrical certificates. I'm not a window fitter. I'm not an electrician. I mean, all of that additional stuff that suddenly just become part of the conveyancing remit because nobody had the balls to say, no, stop it. I mean, all of that is, you know, and let's not even talk about the AML regime, You know, the banks are best
Yeah.
placed to deal with that. But it was NatWest that was fined £264 million for letting people turn up with money in bin bags, for Christ's sake. So, you know, but conveyancers, you know, it's just such a difficult kind of part of the process in a way. And are there just too many prop tech providers out there now who will rail against what you're saying? And are there too many conveyancing firms who've invested heavily in these products, who are never going to say, well, you know, I'm going back to pen and paper? And we're also faced with, you know, the Open Property Data Association, the government thinking digitizing everything's the best thing since sliced bananas, and the Land Registry pushing for digital registrations. I mean, and digital, you know, property, you know, holding of title digitally. I mean, are you railing against the machine?
So there's a lot to unpick there. Let me start with the digital point. When you have a well-conceived, well-designed, and well-executed digital platform that actually improves the process for every single person involved, that is worth doing. Simple example, right? Airbnb. Yeah. Airbnb came along to a very well-established global marketplace of holiday lets that have been there for decades, and they digitized the process. That's all they did. They made it safe and efficient and easy. Now, to everyone's benefit, right? There were no losers except for the really old-fashioned, you know, sort of holiday cottage agents that would do stuff. But I mean, the Airbnb was getting higher prices. It was creating better value. There was better security, safety. The money was, they created safety where it didn't exist before, and they sped things up. They made it easier to find, easier to book. It just, you know, and then Uber did the same, right? In a marketplace environment where you've got two different parties already transaction, you've got drivers and passengers, okay? And remember, I don't know if you remember what a shit fight it used to be to order a taxi at night, and you know, there's stop at the cash point and all the rest of it. And they digitized the taxi process, of all things, right? So when it's done right, it's amazing, and it's life-changingly good for all parties concerned. The problem in this industry is that the level of technical competency in both estate agency and conveyancing is so far behind the level of technological competency in other industries. And these industries are unaware of that, right? The estate agency industry is completely lacks self-awareness to go, we are behind the tech curve.
So we've got a tech platform that we will send to market at some point, but it's just initially just for our own internal use, just to basically speed everything up. But that was an idea, not reinventing the wheel. It was just for the deficiencies I thought there were in all the tech products that we've been presented with. And Lorraine and I have discussed this many times, but in conveyancing, you seem to have a tech product that just deals with this little bit here. It doesn't then link to this bit and this bit. And before you know it, people come into the industry that have to operate maybe 10 platforms, probably minimum. 10 platforms, but on certain cases, probably upwards of 20 different platforms. They go into one thing to do one thing, another thing to do another thing. They have to go there to do that, there to do that. They probably have as many logins as Christ knows what. Nothing actually ever joins the wheel.
They're genuinely better off with pen and paper in those scenarios. With literally.
Yeah, and you do wonder. And we thought this just can't be right. We've got to sort of join the whole wheel together and pull everything into the same pot. And to see whether you can work from a platform that integrates with everybody, with the land registry, with the search companies, so that you just work in one central place. But I think with conveyancing particularly, I think what's happening, I don't know whether there's a synergy with the estate agency, but I think that there's a lack of competition, perhaps. There's a lack of outside tech that's come in, and there's just a small amount of selection. And because everybody uses that, everybody's just settled for what it is. And nobody's really pushed forward for anything that's better.
You see, I think that a lot of tech, I know nothing about your platform, but a lot of the tech products that come into estate agency, conveyancing, and all industries, the number one mistake most of them make is overcomplicating what they're trying to do. And the moment you overcomplicate something, and I'm speaking from having designed, built, and released multiple tech products to the market, right, and having learned the hard way myself. The moment you overcomplicate something, it might work first time out, and very, very quickly it stops working. And it's just dead. And 90% plus of tech products fail for that reason. Fail, full stop, and it's usually for that reason. And the Best Agent platform, I am hoping, and I'm only hoping, that conveyancing firms are going to start to go, hang on, that actually helps us. It's just a simple document communication system. It doesn't pretend to be anything more than that, right? It knows the key milestones in the process, and it allows everyone to see them in line with the agents and everything else. So, there have been chain progression products, haven't there? Chain builder, what was it? View My Chain.
View My Chain, yeah.
Oh God, well that's been going on for years. I mean, the land registry tried to do that with the two, the act back in 2002.
So the UPRN is a good idea. The land registry doesn't use it, right? The government UPRN system is a good idea. The land registry doesn't use it. In 2018, I got 70 prop tech providers into a room and demonstrated to them the Best Agent marketplace, which we designed and built and actually released to solve the problem you just talked about, Stu, which is too many different logins and platforms. And it was simply a place where an agent could connect up all of their different supplier products so that they all interacted in real time.
And did they all sort of close down and take their teddies home and say, oh no, well, we're not sharing our information, data, market share, and all bugger off without engaging?
Lorraine, the reaction was the most extraordinary thing I've ever seen. And I thought I knew how bad the tech in the industry was. So I had them in there. And we had 4 screens up with 4 different products, like unrelated. And I demonstrated live to the room. Someone give me a postcode. Someone give me an address, right? And then watch it as it went across all 4 systems. And all their jaws dropped, right? And the reactions was either, oh, well, you're going to be treading on our toes. We don't want to work with you. Fine. You know you're going to get some of those, right? But some of the other ones were, oh my God, we think this is brilliant. But we don't know how to use that tech. We don't have that skill. Could you teach us that technology? Like, this is widely used open source stuff that people have been using around the world for 10 years or more, and you don't know how to use it. And we had to shelve that whole project, because like 90% of estate agency prop tech, like some big ones, some big well-known ones, went, yeah, there's no way we can integrate that. Like a REST API is the single easiest thing. It's like, it's been around for years. It's totally open. It's free. It's easy. No, we can't do it. So, these are the unspoken problems and the realities in the agency industry about why there's no progress on tech, because there's no one in there that knows what they're doing. And then they get defensive when they get shown up as well, so they don't want to work with you.
I think one of the big problems, though, with any, but particularly I think with the sort of, the land registry's push for digitisation, and to be fair, Stu and I have interviewed Mike Harlow, the Deputy Chief Land Registrar, a couple of times in the last couple of years, and very, very, very erudite, excellent speaker, very, very good, sort of at the helm of that organisation, really. But it is quite interesting, because what I always think about as a lawyer, particularly because you said, a digital platform that, what the holy grail really is, the digital platform that works for every single person involved. But what the lawyers will come back to every time, Charlie, is, and what I've been rabbiting on about on social media and stuff, is, digitisation of property title, for example, the big one, security risk, the cyber risk, the hacking risk, all of that. Where does the liability lie? Because any prop tech product that's produced, whoever produces it, however much money is going into it, is going to be liable to be hacked. So how do you push back against that argument? Because that's what you'd be coming up against from lawyers. That's the argument. I have been coming up against that exact argument for 25 years. Yeah, I imagine you have, to be fair.
Oh,
I suppose the point is, it's not nobody's answered it.
It's no, the point is, you can get, we built Best Agent on using bank grade security. So, it's like the protocols exist to achieve levels of security that banks are required to meet in order to hold vast amounts of consumer private data. Did you know what the number one cause of hacks is?
Well, it's got to be people checking on links, isn't it?
Links, emails.
No. The number one cause of major data breaches is a human letting someone else have their password.
Yeah, human error.
Nothing to do with the technology.
That's probably password 1234.
I mean, that's starting to get less now. But the point is that, you know, if you have a large enough platform, yeah, there will be instances where it happens. But the platform is large enough, you know, there's liability insurance, whatever, you can absorb that. I mean, if you allowed that to be a reason that no platform was ever built, there would be no platforms. Yeah, and fraud existed before tech came along. And technology does two things: it makes it easier and it makes it harder. It's a two-edged coin, and people always think, oh, it's going to be more. Do you remember when contactless payments came out? Everyone's like, oh, I'm never using that. Someone will come up and just steal money out, and now everyone uses it. You know, it's exactly the same. So, you know, I'm not saying that there aren't valid concerns. My point is that the technology exists to deal with them, to mitigate them to an acceptable level.
Yeah, I think the issue for property lawyers, and I suspect you'd be on board with this, Stu, is that I think the thing is, Charlie, that because the property lawyers are the only organisations within that whole conveyancing process that have got the professional indemnity insurance that are properly insured, and Stu, you and I talk about this all the time, it's always us that's going to be picking up the tab. And I think that's the fear. You know, frankly, whether legitimate or not, I think that's a different point. But Stu, that's something that you...
Oh, yes, it's always the case. But I think from Charlie's standpoint, though, I completely agree with him in that I think when people talk about cybercrime and hacking and security, I often think it is a lazy kind of question, insofar as fraud is far more reaching than simply being hacked. And, you know, there was fraud way before we had all these electronic platforms, exactly as you said, Charlie. But on the other hand, it depends on the integration between the law firm and agent and what we're kind of picking up in terms of liability.
Sorry, Stu, can I cut across you there? Because there is the systemic argument, though, isn't it? I forget which of the big conveyancing providers, a couple of, you know, companies a couple of Novembers ago were hacked, and it was such a systemic risk. I mean, fraud's always happened, but if your firm was subject to a fraudulent act 20 years ago, that's going to affect that chain, but it wasn't going to affect a whole host of chains. And the point was, it's the systemic risk now, isn't it, as much as anything else? I think that's one of the key problems, surely. We can all accept fraud's always existed, but if it happens now, the potential for much greater reaching disruption is that much higher.
It depends how the technology is built. So, you know, there are many, many different ways. There are so many different approaches to tech, to security. And in fact, funnily enough, one of the fastest growing, most popular ways to respond to these technology-based fraud risks is actually using analog stuff. It's in storage. I think, which is very clever. But you know, you need to understand the basics of how you can secure stuff, right? Technologically speaking. And the platform that I'm talking about, so we would provide a totally secure, we do provide already a totally secure platform. And in fact, the way I see this is it kind of replaces the memorandum of sale, right? The memorandum of sale. So when a buyer and a seller first come to Best Agent and go, well, I'm thinking of selling my house, I want to choose an agent. Great. They start to create a mover profile. And we start validating their identity to the extent that we can right at the start, right? And we've got some exciting conversations happening to integrate very well-known AML providers into this platform right at the start of the process. So they start there before they even talk to agents, before they book viewings. That means that when they inquire with an agent, as a buyer or a seller, whether to do a viewing on a property or as a seller, that first inquiry comes along and tells the agent, by the way, we've already got a much higher level of information on this person. They've already demonstrated that they are who they are, you know, maybe not to the full requirement, but compared to what they currently get from Rightmove, which is an email address and a phone number. We verified their address. We've done this. So there's instantly an improved level of quality. Okay, that gives agents a much better filter for, hang on, we've got far too many inquiries on this property, which are the ones we want to take seriously. So we're now giving the movers who do qualify themselves better to begin with voluntarily an advantage, right? They're going to get taken more seriously. They're going to get a better chance of viewing that property. And with the sellers, when the seller leads come to agents, and we're, by the way, are encouraging the sellers to instruct the conveyancer, one of our partner conveyancers, before they choose their agent.
What does one of your partner conveyancers mean there, Charlie?
So at the moment, it's Thomas Legal and Sweeney Miller, right? Those are the two.
Are they prescribed? So does a potential seller or buyer have to use them?
No, absolutely not. Never. I never do that. Right. That to me is you have to let people come when they're ready. So what there will be is there will be incentives for the movers to use our partners, but they don't have to. Okay. And
what form would those incentives take?
Usually an advantageous position in terms of how seriously you're going to be taken by the agent, how quickly your house is going to sell. It's much more about saying, my plan is to gamify this qualification and registration process for movers and say, there's no money involved here, but the more you do up front, the higher you're going to get prioritized by agents responding to you. And where there is competition for a property, you're going to be at the front of the queue. Right? Because for first-time buyers, one of the biggest frustrations is, I always lose out to someone else. Were you fully prepared? No. Well, there you are. That was, you could easily have changed that without risking any extra money. You could have been in a better position. And the same with sellers. I say to sellers, if you go to agents and say, I've already instructed my conveyancer, and they're already preparing the paperwork for my sale, I'm now at the point of selecting an agent. The amount you're going to get knocked off your fee by that agent, it's probably going to be enough to cover your conveyancing cost. Because to an agent,
it's interesting because Stu, your experience, sort of 25, 30 years of experience in the business, is that it's a rare seller who will instruct their conveyancer before they go to their agent.
Oh, absolutely.
That's just because they haven't. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, invariably never, or organically, unless they're pushed to. We used to do something a while back, a long time back. Again. When hips were dissolved, and I've forgotten the way we branded it, but we actually offered a service for buyers to become legally ready. So that included things like the ID checks, the AML checks. A lot harder now, granted, because the AML regulations are so much more intensive than perhaps they once were. But the two big barriers were always clients parting with money when they didn't have to, and going on maybe suggest maybe a bit full circle. One of the reasons our sort of fast move scheme potentially didn't work were the agents would tell clients that they didn't have to pay stuff. You don't have to do your ID checks now. Why bother? And I don't think the agents wanted the barrier of the client having to do something to enable them to market the property. So that's the barrier. That's what we came across.
That's one barrier. The other barrier is this, right? So I now have the largest mover audience on social media. I get more views than Phil Spencer on social media. The number one thing I hear from sellers when they're going out to choose a conveyancer before instructing their agent is that the conveyancer is saying, no, it's much too soon. Come back to us when you've had an offer accepted.
Well, but there's an expectation point there, Charlie, because this happened around the it made me as mad as hell, needless to say, but I sometimes just feel that I'm shouting into the void. But one of the issues around the whole material information debacle of the last sort of couple of years was the idea that, to try and avoid the seller misrepresentation thing with all of the ridiculous additional inquiries they were going to have to answer, of course, before they'd spoken to their conveyancer, therefore the sellers were exposing themselves to much greater risk of misrepresentation. But the way that was sort of punted to conveyancers as being an opportunity was, with conveyancers, you could get the seller on board so much earlier and essentially give them this advice for free. Well, why should we be giving this technical advice for free? And I think that might, I could be wrong, but that might, Charlie, be part of that narrative around law firms saying, come back to us when you've got
I think there's two.
Because the seller doesn't want to pay for that work.
Yeah, there's 2 points to that, though. I think there will be certain firms that would welcome an instruction. And of course, there's a slight differential here on advising clients and being instructing. So,
Yeah.
for example, if we're talking about a buyer, somebody said to me that we're looking to buy a property, can you answer some questions? And I loosely go through something. I would want them instructed. So I would welcome being instructed earlier, and the same with a seller. The difference, what Lorraine is, I suppose, leaning to, is when we actually start transacting and working on what is maybe given to us, and of course then whether or not you've got the ability to charge a fee. I think the problem you've got within the conveyancing industry is there's a certain part of it, or a percentage of it, that just doesn't want any change whatsoever. They just want it done the old way. Maybe there's not really the appetite to actually change anything at all. Maybe people of a certain age that it's not really of a concern to them. And that balance of firm that is looking to be forward thinking, I do think they want clients as early as possible. But the marry with this is the material information. And I think, right, the problem we had before was the level of information in these forms that were being sort of thrust upon us, and what we would have to do, i.e. help clients go through those forms. And I think that's where the line draws. Yeah,
well, that was my point, Stu, because that was proper technical advice.
Yeah, but whether you actually want a client, whether you want a client early, absolutely we would.
No, but sorry, Lorraine, you wouldn't give that advice unless you were instructed. So
but Charlie, you're missing the subtle point here, is that when getting instructed, fine, doing the AML, getting them on board, 100% fine. My point is that traditionally, solicitors, conveyancers, obviously aren't going to get paid till the matter completes. And if a seller comes to a conveyancer wanting proper advice on, the property information form, the material information form, the information to give the agent, upon which a buyer is then going to base their decision whether to purchase or not. So therefore, that's where the potential misrepresentation claim lies. That is technical advice for which the conveyancer should be expected to be remunerated. And that was my point about the narrative coming from property lawyers, I might add, in the last couple of years, Charlie. It was, instruct your conveyancer up front. They'll do that work as a loss leader. Why the hell should we do that?
No, you should.
Because if we're giving, we can then be sued for that.
But so when people have said to me the point about sellers don't want to put money up front, the way I've suggested it to them is, if you're going to move, if you're going to sell, as in you're not just going, maybe we won't, but we're definitely going to sell, then you're not risking any money by instructing the conveyancer up front. You're going to have to do it anyway. By doing it sooner, you're going to get a better fee and much better attention from an agent, because the agent's number one fear is a time-wasting seller, right? They get instructed, they don't know which one's going to waste their time or not. And when they get a client that's like, I've instructed my lawyer, I'm definitely a committed seller, they will get a better level of service. That seller will get a better level of service from the agent, and the agent will typically take 0.25% off their fee. Okay, so it's actually almost a sell. It then makes, of course, the property comes to market with all material information, which is much more appealing to a buyer, improves the creation of a market for that property, so improves the chance of getting a better price, improves the chance of selling it faster. The agent's happy to do a lower fee. The seller's got basically offset the cost of the conveyancing it by getting a lower fee anyway. So if on the condition that you are a seller who intends to move, come what may, there's no argument against upfront selling. Now, on your point about advice, Lorraine, so the sellers who take my advice are instructing conveyancers and not questioning the fee. They're not looking for cheap. Okay, and I always say to the movers, everyone should economize in their life. There's no point wasting money. Never economize on a one-off professional service. Never. It's always a false economy. So to offset your concern about how we don't want to be giving advice for free and we don't want to be opening ourselves up to claims, you charge accordingly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 100% with you, Charlie. I think what concerned me is that, again, funny enough, Stu and I have just earlier before we met you we've done a YouTube chat on this about, do conveyancers talk themselves down? And, spoiler alert, yes, they do. But my problem was that it was conveyancers that saying, oh, well, no, you should be doing this, treat it as a loss leader. Oh, absolutely not. But that is entirely entirely indicative of the attitude of conveyancing lawyers, Charlie, and their sort of position in the market over the last 25 years. It's to and Stu, we say all the time, don't we? It's talking themselves down.
Look, my view and the platform we use, we give the clients to instruct the option to instruct early. We do take money on account that will then be billed if that matter doesn't proceed. So we would make a charge for that. The only thing I would say, Charlie, I'm not sure what your thoughts on this are, but the general public are still reluctant to pay for something at that point is not definite or not 100% going through. So although your point about the seller always looking to sell, my experience is not necessarily that they would still part with that money. Again, also in terms of conveyancing, I'm not sure what our clients necessarily perceive in terms of the value. And the example to that would be, for example, auctions. So we offer a service here where we give advice on auction packs. Okay, so the client's going to go to that auction. They're going to be legally bound when they bid on that property. They're going to spend a couple of £100,000, but they will quibble if that auction pack advice. If we wanted to charge a fee for that, it would have to be, 200-300 quid at least, and that is at least. But people will not pay that fee. We actually offered this service and we played around with the fees. We went as low as 100 quid. And even then, there were a lot of people that would not engage. We dropped the fee to 50 quid and all of a sudden everybody would. Now, we wouldn't do it for 50 quid, obviously. But the point is that, people, I don't think, see the value in it.
I hear that point. But when you can show people, sellers, that it will improve the chance of a better price, so that they are likely to get a higher price because they're likely to get more bidders because it's a more attractive property because the legals are ready, number one. Number two, the chances of fall throughs, which are generally accepted to be around 1 in 3 on average, right? They drop massively if your paperwork's done up front. The chance of a fall through, and it drops simply by dint of the fact that a shorter time, like time is the biggest enemy of a transaction. Right? There's an absolute linear relationship between the longer it goes on, the chance of it falling through. It's just like that. Okay, so when it's down to agents, and I'm always trying to inform consumers about this, that if you don't see any value in reducing your transaction time from 5 months to 3 months, I mean, there's going to be other things that you save if it's too much shorter anyway.
You're right.
I think let the cheap conveyancers and the cheap customers have each other, right? You kind of want to, because you cannot pander to unreasonable customers.
Unreasonable customers. But they will all be in chains though, Charlie, and that's also an additional problem, isn't it? The chain that's a killer blow. We all know that. So everybody, you could have half a dozen tip-top conveyancers, working within the best agent framework. Everybody can be geared up. But if you're waiting for one transaction that's in that type of organisation you've just described, because at the end of the day, a chain will move at the rate of the slowest transaction in it. And that's the issue, isn't it? That's assuming you can get hold of them to do something as basic as agree a completion date.
So all we can do, you can't influence every individual transaction. You can create an environment where it becomes more incentivized to do shorter, faster transactions, and you improve the probabilities, and then chains start to get slightly smaller, right? That will start to happen. And then those ones, as people start to see the benefit and the value of, hang on, this is a better way, more people will adopt that way, and it starts to become a snowball, a self-fulfilling, like, who doesn't want shorter transaction times? People, and you're right, like, people didn't want to use contactless, and most people stood back and go, I'm not using that. And after a while, they start to see everyone having a much better time and go, oh, okay, I'll use it then. So you only need to get about 5 to 10% of people doing it and demonstrating, look at the results. And other people start going, okay, maybe we might have to do this.
The question is, Charlie, because I think we could talk all day to you, because you're so interesting and knowledgeable. Because I think that's one of the things, actually, Stu and I said off air, that differentiates you. And of course, you having explained your background, that makes perfect sense, because everything's data driven. You've got the data to back up what you say. But I guess there's 2 questions really. Firstly, after you've had your sort of roadshow presentations to the agents, and maybe earlier next year, will you come back and talk to us again to see how you're progressing? But secondly, of course, the the question on Stu and mine's lips is, you know, come on, you and Russell Quirk, what's going on? Russell, a friend of the show. You know, we've been on his podcast. He's as we said off air, he's the only guest we've had to edit potentially slanderous comments out. So what's the SP in a nutshell, Charlie, with you and Russell?
So, I mean, I love his plan for solving the social housing problem. I mean, I'm a massive supporter of that plan. I agree with him completely on how you solve the social housing crisis. I suspect he has clients with certain interests. It means he won't ever talk the market down. That's just a guess. That's speculation on my part. My point has always been to him, Russell, we all benefit from more transactions. Agents need to stop worrying about predicting house prices because it's a pointless zero-sum game. And just agents should be saying to movers, we're not responsible for what the market does. We're responsible for getting you moved, whatever the market's doing.
Well, that to be fair,
it's a great way to end. That is.
Yeah, I think so. We'll, in the interests of, transparency and fairness, we'll give Russ a right of reply, Charlie. But as Stu said, that is a brilliant, punchy way to end this chat. So, as I say, we could talk to you all day, but we'd perhaps have to, divide this up into a series. So, thanks ever so much for joining us, Charlie. It's been a delight.
It's been delightful for me too. Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, we really appreciate your time, Charlie.
Thanks a lot. Take care,
guys. See ya.